All right, now in this lecture, we're going to do something a little bit more fun. The past few were just kind of technical lectures showing you around the environment, getting you a bit more familiar with the tools that Photoshop has available. But now we're going to get into some really cool stuff. This is what makes me excited about Photoshop and what will probably get you pretty excited about it too. This is when you hear about, people use that phrase like, oh, that looks Photoshopped, or, when you see photos in magazines or whatever, people use that phrase, they Photoshop that photo. Well, that's because in Photoshop, obviously, you can Photoshop a photo. You can manipulate the photo to be what it originally was not. And that's whether to enhance a photo, to make subtle edits, to make totally drastic edits, to change the scenery altogether, to make a person look different, to make them look better, worse, whatever you want to do. Now, that's what's great about Photoshop. You kind of have unlimited options depending on your skill, obviously. But we're going to get started right now with something fun. I'm going to take this photo that we've been looking at for the past little bit. This is a recent trip that my wife Laura and I took to San Diego so we could just get away, do some surfing, get some sunshine, and eat some surf and turf. And yeah, so here I am on the beach looking like I knew what I was doing, but I'm a pretty amateur surfer. So this is a photo of that trip. Now, what we're going to do is instead of this big, beautiful blue sky in the background, we're going to change that so it is actually something a little closer to where I am, and that's the mountains. So if I show you the edited photo, you'll see it's actually quite a different photo, and it totally creates a different image, a different message. So check this out. This is a totally different image altogether. I mean, it's basically two images comped together using Photoshop, and it just creates a different scene. It looks like I'm somewhere in the Rocky Mountains with snow on it, and then I'm on this beautiful tropical beach with beautiful waves in the background, like I was surfing in the mountains. So it creates a very interesting scene. That's obviously not real, but you can make it look real. And this is just a very basic example done in just a few minutes. So what we're going to do right now is recreate this. And I've provided the Photoshop document for you with all the assets. You'll get a folder here called Brad Surfing, and it will have the two original source images. So me on the beach in San Diego and just the mountains. And I got this image actually from Creative Market in a free download. And this is the Photoshop document, which will have the two over here in the layers palette. The original is the original photo and the edited version, if you want to reference that as we go through this lecture. So let's turn off edited. And we're going to edit original. Or what you can do is right-click and, right-click on this layer group and duplicate the group. Let's call it student. And now you'll have your version. So keep the original. There's my version, and this is going to be your version. And we're going to go ahead and make this look like the edited version right here. So what we're going to do now is play around with some layers. We haven't really discovered these much, but we're going to utilize the layers and some custom edits, and we're going to do a couple things here to make this pretty cool looking photo. So first what we need to do is select me. And the reason why is because we want to be able to remove this sky without cutting me out. So for example, if I just use the polygonal lasso tool, and I just created a selection along the horizon and just did this and then hit delete, then I'm gone. There we go. Now I'm gone, and then that's no good. That's a destructive edit, and now I lost the upper half of my torso. No good. We need to be able to remove me from that layer and then remove the sky. How do you do that? Sounds like magic. It's actually quite simple, but you need to be a little bit patient with the selection. So we're going to select me, and we're going to use a few different selection tools to get me out of here. So yeah, let's go over here, and let's start with the quick selection tool. Now, for me, the selection is a little bit small, so I'm going to increase that size of the selection brush to, let's say, that looks good, 35 pixels. I'm just going to start selecting me here. And you can see it selected my head pretty good. It'll select this stuff pretty easy because it's black. It's a lot of contrast. It will be really easy to select that part of my torso. Let's try and select my feet. This is going to be a little bit more challenging because it's kind of camouflage in the sand here. So I'm going to make my selection tool smaller by using the left square bracket. You can see that, or you can also do that up here using size. And I'm going to select in here. There we go. It looks pretty decent. There we go. Photoshop automatically kind of rounds it out a little bit. Let's select this one. And there we go. I'm going to just remove a little bit of that by holding Option to subtract the selection. You can also choose up here. In the Options palette, you could subtract from the selection. But I like keeping it on the standard and then clicking and holding Option because it toggles easily back and forth between adding and removing the selection. So Option, and then I'm going to subtract from that selection, and that looks better. Also right here, right in between my legs, there's the sand. We need to deselect that. Great. Now we need to select the surfboard. So let's go ahead and try doing that. Photoshop will do a decent job here with the selection tool. But now we've got some waves and some water, and we're missing some up here. So we're going to subtract the selection here. Obviously, if you're doing it, it might be a bit different, so you might not have the exact same process as me. You might have had it selected perfectly, but it's likely that you're having a similar experience to me right now. And so we're going to want to do that. Add some more selection here. And a little bit more here. And here. Now it's looking better. It's a little bit rough. So what I like to do now, looks like I'm actually missing, I'm going to subtract this selection right there. That looks a bit better. There we go. And one more, subtract right there. Add a bit more. So selecting is kind of a little bit of an art. You kind of have to have patience and you have to do your best to select. And this is kind of a crude selection. I'm just kind of making it quick. But you can zoom in really close using the zoom tool. Like right here, and you could zoom in and you can make a better selection using the lasso tool, and you could drag, whoops, didn't want to deselect that. You have to make sure to add to the selection. So you choose up here, add to selection, or you can click and hold Shift while you're selecting so you don't lose your current selection. You could do something like that. There's a bit more here. And then a bit more over here. You can also use, if it's a straight line, your polygonal lasso tool. So this is a fairly straight line. I'm going to hold Shift while I make this selection. And there we go. Now I can let go Shift so I can, perfect. And that's decent. That's good enough for now. And what I'm going to do now, I made the selection. I'm actually going to make the selection a little bit more clear. So right click within the selection and click Refine Edge. That will give you what the selection looks like without the background. And you could see the rough edges that we kind of didn't select very well. And how you could fix that is just modifying the edge right here. So you can smooth it out a bit. You can see that now it's smoothed around the selection there. You can feather it, which means it will soften the edges. And you can use contrast to make it a little bit more sharp. So you can see there, that's a bit more sharp. It looks like a lot cleaner of a selection now. And you can shift the edge in or out to select more or less. So if I go in, I'll select less of the background and more of just me and the surfboard. And there we go. And then the view mode, you can change to the marching ants, which is the selection that you'll see now in a moment. The overlay on black, on white, and so on and so forth. I like doing on white in this case because there's a lot of contrast between me and the background, so I can see if my selection is clean. And that's good. Hit OK, and now that's modified your selection. You can see it's a little bit more clean. Now what I want to do is make a copy of this selection and create a new layer with me in it. So go ahead and hit Edit, Copy, and that will have copied that selection. Now I want to create a new layer right here. I just hit new layer, and now I have a new layer. I'm going to rename it by double-clicking the title and say Brad, just like that, and hit return. That will close it. Now you're in the new layer. It's transparent, so you can't see anything until you hit paste. Now it's pasted me in that layer. You could see in the little preview. But if I turn this layer off, you'll see that I'm still there. Cool? Makes sense? Now, you might wonder, how can I adjust my canvas? Like if I'm all the way down here and I can't really see, there's a couple ways to do that. You can use these scroll bars, or you can use the mouse wheel on your Magic Mouse or your normal mouse. And you can also hit and press and hold the space bar, and you'll get the hand, which is this hand tool, and drag the canvas around. You could also zoom in and zoom out by going Command minus or plus. That's just so you can have a better view of your canvas. So there we go. Okay, so now we have me, but now what we want to do is remove the sky. So we're going to go back to this layer. And what we can do is you can make a copy of this layer, or you could just make a destructive edit, because at least we have the original in this group. So I'm going to go ahead and make a destructive edit. Polygonal lasso tool. And I'm going to select along the horizon of the ocean here. And I can see that's pretty good. I'm going to select up here all the way up to above the canvas so I get the entire sky, and close it off at the end here. You'll see I can do that. There's my selection. Go ahead and hit delete. And now you'll have me with no sky and the sand in the ocean. Now all we got to do is go to our folder and grab the image with the mountains and drag that into Photoshop. Now we have this image, and what we could do to drag this image, we need to drag it into Brad's surf. I'm just going to close a couple of these here so it's a little bit easier for you to see. So I need to drag this image into this. All I need to do is hit the move tool, click and hold. You can start dragging. You can't see anything happening, but I'm currently holding the image. I could even unlock the image here. And now I can drag it and you can see it move. Drag it into this tab, drop it in this Photoshop document, and there we go. Now we have another layer. But now we need to make it smaller. So use the transform tool. So you can go edit, free transform, or just Command T. And you could start dragging this corner or whatever side, and you can make it smaller. You can also use the options to specifically make the image smaller. So you could say 50% here, or you could just click and drag. If you hold shift, it will maintain the aspect ratio. The move tool will automatically move it back up here if you drag it. Keep resizing it until you get a good size that will fit the canvas. I'm going to lock it to the top corner, and I'm just going to drag this so it matches the edge of the canvas. And there we go, almost. A little bit more. There we go. Hit return, and that will finish that transform. But now you can see it kind of overlaps over top of our ocean. That doesn't work. That's because the layer is on top of the background with the sand. So just drag that layer below it. And now it should hide behind that ocean. I could see a transparent pixel over here. So I'm just going to drag this down and resize this sky a little bit. There we go. And I'm just going to move it over. I can use the arrow keys to fine tune the move. Still see some transparent pixels. And there we go. So there is our sky with the ocean and me. But there's a little bit of a color discrepancy. So you can clearly see this is not the same scene. It's very different. It's very warm here, and it's kind of cold, the color. So you could just do some hue saturation, and you can kind of drag this around to match the color a bit and make it a little bit more kind of a little bit of a green yellow. You could see now it's starting to match a little bit. That looks a lot more like that scene. You can change the saturation. You can have less. You can have more. Obviously, that looks a little weird if you do too much. You can change the lightness. And there we go. And now the only thing left we really need to do is add a text layer. So you can just hit the text tool, but first you want to create a new layer. and then choose the text tool. Select where you want to type, and then I'm just going to say Brad surfing. Surfing. There we go. And now it's not centered. You might want to know how to center your text. Well, that's where the guides come in. If you use your guides, it will automatically lock to the center of the canvas. So just click and drag, and you'll eventually see that it locks. There we go. So that's center. And now if I free transform, Command T or edit free transform, this little dot in the middle, this little crosshairs, you could just see that's the center. Vertically and horizontally, you could drag that until it locks to the center. And there we go. Now I'm going to hide those guides, going View, Show Guides, and I'm going to update this text to say surfing in the mountains. Obviously, I'll need to recenter that, so I'm going to need to see those guides again. And free transform, center that just like so. Hide those guides. And there we go. Brad surfing in the mountains. And it looks, let's see, pretty close to the edited version. Pretty good. Not too bad. And so, yeah, that's how you use Photoshop to manipulate images to create some pretty cool effects. So in the next lecture, we're going to go a little further, and I'm going to challenge you to do your own Photoshop work. So we'll see you there.